Hello. I wanted to take a minute to go over the safety contract. This is for all of my students that will be taking my physics and earth science classes this year. So we're going to talk about some ways to keep you safe. And to do so, we have the safety contract, and this is going to cover all the common sense things you should do to keep yourself safe. We're going to call those out just in case they're not common sense. Okay? And you're going to be required to read through this and to sign and to have your parents sign. And that means you're agreeing to abide by these principles. Okay? This is called the Flynn Safety Contract, or the Flynn Scientific Student Safety Contract. All right? And as it talks about here, we want to be safe. We want to have a really good learning experience. We don't want anyone getting hurt. And so these ideas, these principles should keep you safe if you abide by them. And they must be followed at all times. Okay? And I'm not going to read through all these. I'm going to kind of skim through them, cover some of the main topics, but you are expected as a student to read through all these. Okay? And your parents are also technically required to read through them as well. So make sure you understand them, make sure you're willing to obey them and abide by them so that you don't get hurt. Okay? Starting off with number 1, you can see we're already going down that common sense road. Behave responsibly. Don't do crazy stuff, right? We're here to have fun, we're here to learn. But we're not here to mess around, not here to horseplay, not here to do the newest TikTok dance and knock stuff over with your swinging arms as you're flossing. Just kidding. I know that's old. Follow directions. Pay attention. Make sure you're paying attention to what I'm saying. If you're not paying attention to what I'm saying, it's very likely that you're not listening to what I'm saying, and you're probably not going to understand what's happening, and you're going to feel embarrassed, and hopefully you're still willing to ask, because if you don't, then you might end up hurting yourself or breaking something. All right, when you enter the classroom, just don't start touching stuff. Wait for instruction. Wait for instruction. Okay, no food in the classroom. Hopefully that's obvious. There's very high probability of contamination when you're eating food. You might get stuff on your hands that might damage laboratory equipment. And you're also transferring who knows what from your hands to your food to your mouth. Especially right now. We're trying to be as careful as possible not to get sick. And so you're going to want to make sure that your hands are clean. You're not going to want to eat and expose your hands to things that are not clean. Okay? Never do experiments that aren't authorized by your instructor, in this case me. All right. A really good rule of thumb for any type of science class that has labs is make sure you understand what's happening that day before you come to class. It's going to be even more of a big thing when you get to college. And I remember this in college, being lazy and showing up to class and spending the first hour of my precious 3-hour lab time trying to figure out what I was supposed to do. And there was times when I didn't quite finish, or I barely finished. And if I just read through the lab before class, then I probably would have been just fine finishing it with plenty of time to spare, and I would have had a lot less stressful time in my labs in college. Okay? I know in high school most of our labs weren't that complex, and so that wasn't an issue, but you should still be prepared. All right? No fooling around, no horseplay. Those things should be obvious. Don't do those in my classroom, or in anybody's classroom, but especially mine. Right? All right, good housekeeping. Don't leave your backpack on the floor where people can trip over it and then fall face first into whatever your experiment you're working on, right? Please, just keep your work area clean. Keep your aisles clean. Be aware of procedures. Also be aware of your surroundings, and this is probably true for any situation, right? If we're working with Bunsen burners, we're working with something flammable, you're going to want to know where the fire extinguisher is. You're going to want to know where the fire blanket is so you can smother the fire if one should happen. You're going to want to know where the door is just in case. Those are good to know in any situation. You go to the movie theater, if there's a fire, you would obviously want to know where the door was ahead of time. Okay? Things like that are very important to be aware of. So be aware. You don't have a fume hood. I've seen this happen though. Be in a ventilated area if you're working with something that's volatile or something that's smelly, that has poisonous vapors. Be alert. Tell your instructor if anything crazy happens. If there's any unsafe conditions, if someone's acting weird, if someone's hurt, if your lab partner's falling asleep and their face is falling on your experiment, okay, you probably shouldn't be in class. So please be alert. Go to bed at a decent time. We want to keep you safe. Keep your hands out of your mouth. Keep your hands out of your eyes. Make sure your hands are clean. This is especially true right now. As you well know, wash your hands. Soap and water. Please, just keep your hands clean. All right? Pay attention to your experiments. If we were, for example, working with Bunsen burners, you would never just leave them running and, leave the classroom to go to the restroom or something. You would never do that, right? You're never allowed in storage rooms, preparation areas, my cabinets. Don't do it. I'll write you up without question. I have to keep you safe. If that means giving you demerit just because you're in my stuff, endangering yourself, I got to do what I got to do, okay? It's not because I'm mad at you or anything like that. I just have to keep you safe. Sharp objects. All right, I'm sure your parents have told you this before. If you have sharp objects, don't run around with them. Don't run around with scissors, knives, anything that might stab your body. Obviously, it could hurt you if you fall on it, right? Or you might run into your little brother, or who knows what could happen, little sister, whoever. Just be safe. This is probably one of the most important. It makes you wonder why it's number 23. Safety goggles. This is probably one of the most important things in the lab. You don't want to get anything in your eyes. Broken glassware, wires, chemicals. Your eyes are very fragile, very delicate. We don't want to damage those. We want to keep you safe. Contact lenses can be potentially dangerous. There's some solvents and chemicals that if you were to splash those in your eye while you're wearing contact lenses, those lenses could actually fuse to your cornea and you'd have to have them surgically removed. So that's something to be aware of. If you have contact lenses, be self-aware, self-advocating. Let your instructor know the situation so they can use their best judgment just to make sure you're safe and able to learn without risking yourself or your body. All right, dress code kind of negates number 25. You're going to dress properly for lab. Our dress code is pretty much going to make sure that you're always dressed properly. An exception might be long hair. If you happen to have long hair, be aware of what we're doing. If we're working on a lab or we're working with motors or any way your hair might get caught in something, keep your hair back. Tie your hair up. I would highly recommend, if you have long hair, always having some type of a scrunchie or something that you can put your hair up if needed in any situation. And that should be pretty obvious. You want to keep your body safe. In my class, we're not going to need lab aprons, but if it was a chemical lab, I'd probably have a lab apron for you. Hopefully. If anyone's hurt, make sure you tell someone. Don't try to keep it a secret. Chemicals in your eyes. Okay, that's probably one of the most important because you could lose your vision. Okay, you need your eyes. So please say something if something happens. The chemical lab, or the high school science lab as we call it, has an eye wash station. And you would want to make sure you rinse out your eyes for long enough to flush out whatever's damaging your eyes. And your instructor will help you. If anything like that was to happen, just shout if you have to make sure everybody knows what's happening. Mercury thermometers. Please don't touch liquid mercury or any mercury. It looks cool. It's not a toy. That should be obvious. Consider everything in the laboratory dangerous. Don't touch unless you're instructed to. That's just to keep you safe. All right, don't return stuff to the original containers. If you're wondering why, think about contamination. Just because two chemicals look exactly the same doesn't mean they are the same chemical. You might have two chemicals that are a white powder, for example. That doesn't mean they're the same chemical. Salt and baking soda are not the same thing. Just be aware. So acids and bases, or acids and water, we're not going to be messing with stuff like that. In chemistry, you probably will. This is a physics concept. You don't add water to acid because the heat capacity of acids is less than the heat capacity of water. And, if it has a low heat capacity, then it heats up faster. And if it heats up faster, it might vaporize. And that's probably going to mess up your experiment anyway. If you add water to acid, the acid could vaporize. Then you'll have less acid to acidify your water, right? And so your titration will be off, your pH will be off. So long story short, acid to water. And usually with any type of mixture, you would always want to add to the highest heat capacity material. All right, a lot of this stuff's pretty straightforward. Glass, be careful with glass. If you're doing things with glass, you could hurt yourself. Don't shove glass into rubber stoppers towards your body. If the glass was to shatter, you would basically drink box your hand if you want to think about it that way. So think about a Capri Sun, stabbing a straw into Capri Sun. If you're stabbing a rubber tube into a rubber stopper and the rubber tube was to shatter, you would literally Capri Sun your hand, if you will. Don't do that. Wash bottles should only have distilled water in them, especially if they're intended for rinsing glassware and equipment. That'd really not be fun to be the next person to have some unknown chemical being squirted onto their materials. Okay, use extreme caution with fire. Okay, on 49, you're using a gas burner. Hair is flammable. Don't get your hair near the flames. Be careful with fire. Never leave a lit burner unattended. This is an obvious fire hazard. So as you can see, a lot of these things are very important, and none of them are a joke. They're all very important to keep you safe. Like it talks about here, hot things look very similar to cold things, if not the same. Hot glass looks exactly the same as cold glass. So don't go grabbing stuff without being aware of what you're doing. You could easily burn yourself. All right. So I expect you to read through this, understand all the points of this. You're going to have a test on these concepts, right? In order to be able to be in this class, you have to be able to pass this test, right? If you don't pass the test with a perfect score, you have to retake it. I'm not kidding, okay? So make sure you're prepared for the test and make sure you understand these concepts so that when you take the test, you can get a perfect score and that you don't have to retake it. All right, I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching. All right, until next time.